Seeing a pregnant woman exhausted on her gas station shift, Keanu stops, offers her water, and listens to her struggles. What begins as a small act of kindness turns into life-changing help for the young mother, proving that true heroism happens off-screen. On the edge of a sleepy highway, there's a small gas station that most drivers forget the moment they pull away. But one warm summer night, under flickering neon and a sky full of restless stars, the quiet place became the crossroads of a secret older than any road on the map. The pumps stood like tired metal soldiers, ticking softly as they cooled. Moths battered themselves against the buzzing lights, and somewhere in the dark fields beyond the asphalt, crickets sang a thin, lonely chorus. Inside the glass doors, a young woman moved slowly between shelves, one hand on her lower back, the other stacking bottles with a care that betrayed how heavy her swollen belly had become. Her name tag read Lena. Her uniform was clean but faded, and the circles beneath her eyes were darker than the oil stains under the cars that stopped here. A black motorcycle rolled in and broke the stillness, its engine purring low instead of roaring, as if the rider was trying not to wake something sleeping in the night. He took off his helmet and shook loose a fall of dark hair that the years had somehow refused to tame. The station's pale light carved soft lines in his face, the kind of lines that come from quiet laughter and too many long, lonely roads. To anyone watching, he was just another traveler, a familiar famous face passing through like a rumor come to life. But the man who stepped off the bike felt the world differently than any human around him. He didn't just see the gas station's harsh lights. He saw the thin blue veins in the fluorescent tubes and heard the tiny crackle of electricity trapped inside them. He didn't just smell gasoline and coffee. He smelled Lena's fear, sharp and metallic, buried under the stubborn scent of cheap soap and lemon cleaner. Above it all, he heard the rhythm of her heart, and beneath that, the smaller, faster heartbeat of the child she carried, like a silver bell ringing in another room. He paused by the door, fingers hovering over the handle, torn by a tension no one outside his own skull could feel. For centuries, he had trained himself not to listen too closely to hearts. Once, long ago, he had been a king in a city that never saw the sunrise. He had ruled over shadows and secrets, every beat of mortal life around him a temptation and a burden. Now, in this era of LED lights and cell towers, he lived with a different name, a different face in the public eye, pretending he was just a man who liked motorcycles and quiet places. It was safer that way, for everyone. Yet something in Lena's heartbeat pulled at him like an old song. There was courage in it, and exhaustion, and a fragile kind of hope that ached in his chest more than any wound ever had. He had heard that sound before, centuries ago, in another woman's chest, on a night when his choice had destroyed everything he loved. He swallowed, pushed the door open, and walked inside, the little bell above it chiming like a warning. Lena glanced up with the automatic smile of someone who has to be polite for a living, even when her feet are screaming. When she recognized him, the smile flickered into something more complicated, surprise, a shy kind of awe, and then a quick, embarrassed laugh. "Wow," she said, tucking a loose strand of hair under her cap. "I didn't think tonight could get any weirder. What can I get you?" "Water," he answered gently, his voice warm but distant, like a song from another room. "And maybe a chair for you." His eyes dropped briefly to her belly, then back to her face, kind and careful. "You shouldn't be on your feet this long." Her hand tightened on the shelf. "Bills don't care if I sit," she said, trying to make it a joke and almost succeeding. "End of shift in 3 hours, I can make it." There was pride there, and also the quiet terror of someone who had already lost more than she admitted. He saw the tremble in her fingers as she reached for a bottle, the way she hid it by moving faster. He crossed to the coolers, the air so cold it fogged faintly as he opened the glass door. His reflection wavered there, the lights unable to quite decide what to do with him. For a moment his eyes looked darker than they should, almost too deep, like midnight in an ancient hall. He blinked, and the illusion faded, leaving only a tired man choosing water. When he returned to the counter, he set one bottle down to pay for and slid another toward her without a word. Lena stared at it, then at him. "I can't take this," she murmured, but her throat moved as if she could already feel the coolness on her tongue. "You can," he said softly. "Consider it a king's order." The word slipped out before he could stop it, and for a heartbeat his gaze turned inward, startled by his own choice of language. Lena laughed again, a little more freely this time. "Well, Your Majesty, thank you. My baby and I appreciate your royal generosity." She twisted the cap open and drank. For the first time that night, the tension in her shoulders eased. It was such a small thing, water, shared between strangers under bad lighting, but it felt heavier than that, somehow, as if a thread had been tied quietly between them. He should have left it at that. A bottle of water, a kind word, anonymous kindness, then gone. That was his rule now: keep moving, don't get attached, don't stay long enough for anyone to notice the shadows that followed him. But as he watched Lena rub her back and wince, heard the tired hitch in her breathing, something old and stubborn inside him refused to walk away. Maybe it was the memory of the woman he had once failed to save. Maybe it was the bright, steady echo of the unborn child's heart, calling to him from a place beyond reason. "Do you have anyone to help you?" he asked quietly. "Family, friends?" Her smile cracked at the edges. "Used to," she said. "Life got complicated. People leave when things stop being fun. It's okay, though. I've got this job and the baby's healthy. That's enough." She swallowed and looked away, pretending to check the register, but he saw the shine in her eyes before she blinked it back. "Besides, I don't really have time to feel sorry for myself, not when I still have a shift to finish." The air in the station seemed to grow thicker, the hum of the coolers suddenly too loud. He knew that feeling better than she could imagine, the stubborn decision to stand alone even when the weight was too much. He had ruled a kingdom like that once, surrounded by people yet utterly alone. He had sworn never to rule anything again, not even his own heart, if it meant watching another life break under the strain. Outside, a truck rumbled past without stopping, its headlights washing pale light over the windows. In that instant, as the glass reflected the world in reverse, he caught something that did not belong. A shadow moved against the light, not cast by any vehicle or person. It slid over the pumps like a stain, too smooth, too deliberate, then vanished as the truck roared away. The tiny hairs along the back of his neck rose. The night beyond the glass, which had seemed merely empty a moment before, now felt crowded with invisible eyes. A cold scent slipped in through the gaps in the door frame, slicing through the smells of coffee and rubber and cleaning spray. It was a scent from another century, one he had prayed he would never smell again. Lena didn't notice. She was busy scanning a pack of gum for a tired driver and forcing another bright, serviceable smile. But the man by the counter, king of a forgotten darkness, hiding behind the face of a gentle stranger, heard something the others could not. Beneath the hum of neon and the murmur of late-night radio, there was a new sound rising in the distance. A low, hungry whisper that curled through the darkness like smoke searching for an open window. His jaw tightened. They had found him after all this time, or worse, they had found her. He turned toward the doors, every instinct battling inside him. He had promised himself he would never drag innocent people into his world again. Yet as Lena shifted her weight and winced, one hand automatically shielding the curve of her belly, he knew walking away was no longer an option. Something out there was moving closer with every heartbeat, something that did not know mercy or kindness or the meaning of a quiet life on a night shift. The station lights flickered once, twice, as if something outside had brushed its fingers over the power lines. The radio cut to static for a second, then returned with a song that suddenly felt too cheerful, too fragile. Lena looked up, frowning toward the darkened windows. "Did you see that?" she asked, her voice small but steady. He stepped closer to her side, placing himself between her and the glass without even thinking about it. His pulse slowed, not from calm, but from the careful control of someone who has spent centuries turning his fear into a weapon. "Stay behind the counter," he said softly, "and no matter what you hear, don't open that door." She stared at him, startled by the sudden change in his tone. "Why? What's going on?" For a long heartbeat he considered lying, pretending it was just a storm, just bad wiring, just some harmless human danger he could explain away. But then he heard it again, the distant rustle of ancient footsteps brushing against a world of concrete and asphalt, and he understood there would be no more hiding after tonight. He met her gaze, his eyes darker now, holding a depth that made the fluorescent light around them feel dim. "Because," he said quietly, each word a choice he could never undo, "something very old is coming, and it's not here for me." He tilted his head, listening to the night, then looked down at her belly, where the unborn child's heartbeat fluttered like a trapped star. "It's here for your baby." The shadow at the glass. For a moment, Lena thought she had misheard him. The hum of the coolers, the soft tick of the clock over the coffee machine, even the faint buzz of the neon sign outside. All of it crashed together in her ears, washing his words in a blur of disbelief. "Here for my baby." Her hand flew to her belly as if she could shield the child from a danger she could not see. A shaky laugh slipped out, too high and too thin. "Is this some kind of prank? Are there cameras? Because if this is a show I didn't sign up for." A low scrape whispered across the glass doors. It was such a small sound that she almost missed it, like a branch dragged softly along a window. But the man's head snapped toward it with such sharp focus that every argument she had ready died on her tongue. Outside, the parking lot looked almost empty. The motorcycle, 2 cars at the far pump, the hazy reflection of the station's lights smeared across the asphalt, nothing else. Then the reflection moved the wrong way. Something long and thin, like a smear of shadow left behind by someone walking too fast, slid along the glass from left to right. No footsteps, no body, just darkness stretching and curling as if it were tasting the air on the other side. The man stepped in front of her without thinking. His body wasn't large, but in that instant he felt like a wall. Calm settled over his features, the kind that looks like peace from the outside and feels like a loaded crossbow from within. "Listen to me, Lena," he said, voice low but steady. "Whatever happens, don't invite it in, don't open the door, don't say it can come inside, not even as a joke." She stared past his shoulder at the sliding shadow, her skin prickling. "Invite what in? There's nothing there." As if offended, the darkness pressed harder against the glass, stretching tall, then thin, then wide, shifting shapes like spilled ink searching for a pattern. For a split second, it shaped itself into the outline of a man with impossibly long fingers, then melted back into a formless smear. The overhead lights dimmed, then brightened again. She gripped the counter hard. "I'm calling the police." He caught her wrist, not hard, not possessive, just enough to stop her from reaching for the phone. His touch was surprisingly warm. "They can't help with this," he said. There was regret in his eyes, as if the words tasted bitter. "Then who can?" she demanded. "Because unless you brought a Ghostbusters team on that bike, I'm not." "You're looking at him." The words hung there between them, heavier than the silence that followed. Lena blinked. "You." A short, almost hysterical laugh escaped her. "Okay, Your Majesty, what are you exactly? Secret superhero, government agent, very dedicated method actor." His gaze held hers, calm and unblinking. "Worse," he said with a humorless half-smile. "I'm a very tired king with a lot of old enemies, and one of them just smelled a miracle." Outside, the shadow slid higher, smearing itself up the glass until it reached the top of the door. The bell above it rattled softly without being touched. He released her wrist and moved to the door, stopping just short of it. For the first time, Lena saw his reflection not quite match his body. In the glass, his eyes were darker, almost luminous, as if night had pooled behind his pupils. His teeth, when he pressed his lips together, looked just a little too sharp. Her mouth went dry. "You're joking," she whispered. Then softer, not really wanting an answer, "You're not joking." He didn't look back at her. "Centuries ago," he said, as if reciting something from a memory that still hurt, "there was a court that fed on fear. They hunted children born with a special kind of heart, bright, stubborn, loud, hearts that could amplify anyone's power who kept them close." His fingers hovered over the lock but didn't touch it. "We call them silver-hearted. They're born rarely, maybe once in a few hundred years." He finally turned, his expression raw and open. "Your child is one of them. I heard it the moment I stepped off the bike." Lena shook her head, the motion small and desperate. "My baby is just a baby." "And the brightest star is just burning gas," he replied softly, "until someone points at it and calls it a sun." A voice slid through the crack at the bottom of the door, not a sound, but a feeling that crawled up her spine like cold smoke. "Lena." It sounded like her mother, the same tone she used when Lena was 13 and late for dinner, full of worry and softness. Her mother who had not called in months. Her mother who did not even know she was pregnant. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. The man's jaw tightened. "Yes." The voice came again, sweeter, more coaxing. "Lena, honey, open the door. It's cold out here. You don't want me to be alone, do you?" Tears sprang to Lena's eyes before she could stop them. "That's her," she said. "That's my mom. How does it know my mom's voice?" "Because it drinks memories," he answered. "It tastes fear and pulls shape from it. It's called a shade, a scout. Too weak to break in on its own, it needs you to invite it, just once." He reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out something small and silver, an old ring with a dark red stone set in the center. He turned it between his fingers, and for a heartbeat the overhead lights steadied, as if the little piece of metal had its own gravity. "Who are you?" Lena asked, the question finally breaking loose from everywhere she had been holding it. He looked at the ring a moment longer, then at her. "My people once called me Aryan," he said quietly. "King of the Undimmed, but that was a lifetime ago. These days I mostly go by Kai. It's easier to spell on coffee cups." Despite everything, a weak, unsteady laugh sputtered out of her. The absurdity of it, the gas station, the baby, the shadow that sounded like her mother, the vampire king joking about coffee cups, hit her all at once. It almost helped. Almost. "Kai," she repeated as if tasting the name. "Okay, Kai, king of coffee cups, let's say I believe you. What do we do?" He slipped the ring onto his finger, the metal clicking softly against his skin like a lock turning. His presence seemed to thicken, as if the air had to work harder to move around him. "We buy time," he said, "and we pray the rest of them are still sleeping." The shade pressed against the glass again, harder this time. A spiderweb of frost spread out from where its invisible hands touched, cracking the reflection of Kai's face into jagged pieces. The bell over the door shook, chiming in short, nervous bursts. "Lena," the voice whispered again, cracking now, sounding frightened and small. "Please, I need you, I'm hurt. Open up." Lena's heart twisted. Every instinct in her screamed to help, to open the door, to pull whoever was out there inside where it was warm. That was what she did. She cleaned up other people's messes. She worked double shifts. She held doors open, lent pens, smiled at strangers. It was who she was. Her fingers curled into fists on the counter instead. "No," she said aloud, voice shaking. "No, you're not my mom." For the first time, the shadow on the glass flinched. Kai let out a careful breath, as if they had just passed a narrow edge over a deep drop. Pride flickered in his eyes, surprised and genuine. "Good," he said softly. "That takes strength." The lights blinked once, twice, and went out. Darkness swallowed the station, thick and complete. The hum of the coolers vanished. The radio cut mid-chorus. For a heartbeat, there was only black and the ragged sound of Lena's breathing. Then a new sound slid into the silence. Not outside. Inside. Something cold slid across the floor, a whisper of movement weaving between the aisles. It smelled like damp stone and old basements, like fear you thought you had forgotten. Kai's hand found Lena, S in the dark gripping tightly. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I was wrong." Her throat closed. "Wrong about what?" "It's not just a scout," he said, voice barely above a breath. A shape, darker than the dark around it, unfolded at the far end of the store, between the shelves of motor oil and potato chips. They sent a hunter, and it was already inside. The king without a throne. The darkness in the gas station wasn't simple absence of light. It felt layered, almost heavy, as if someone had draped wet velvet over the world. Lena clung to Kai's hand, her pulse hammering so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. Somewhere in the black, glass rattled softly. A display of keychains chimed like nervous wind. Kai's voice came low and controlled, close to her ear. "Close your eyes," he whispered. She almost laughed. "It's already dark." "Close them anyway," he insisted. "Your mind will try to invent shapes. It will give the fear a face. Don't let it. Let me be the only thing you feel." His hand tightened around hers, steady as a heartbeat. She obeyed, squeezing her eyes shut. In the soundless night behind her eyelids, his presence was the only solid thing, warm, anchored, as if he carried gravity with him. Something moved near the coffee station. A soft scrape. A slow, deliberate slide like cloth dragging over linoleum. "Stay behind me," he breathed. "If it speaks, don't answer." From the far end of the room, a voice drifted toward them, smooth as silk, cold as deep water. "Arian," it purred, "undimmed no longer are you." Lena's breath caught. It didn't sound like her mother or anyone she knew. It sounded like memories of every voice that had ever made her feel small poured into one. The kind of tone bosses used when they said, "We're a family here," right before cutting everyone's hours. Kai's fingers twitched around hers, the only sign that the words had stung. "You're trespassing," he said. "This place is under my protection." Lena heard a faint chuckle like dry leaves brushing stone. "Your protection? A king hiding in gas stations and movie screens. My lord, how far your crown has fallen." She felt Kai shift, placing himself more firmly between her and the voice. "Stay back," he said over his shoulder, and for a second she wasn't sure whether he was talking to her or to the thing in the dark. "Lena, can you move?" Her throat felt thick. "I think so." "There's a storeroom door 3 steps to your left," he said. "When I say now you move, don't run, just go. Quiet, can you do that?" "What about you?" she whispered. "I've been running from these things for a long time," he replied. "Maybe it's time I stopped." The hunter laughed again, closer now, voice gliding between the aisles. "He won't last a minute without inviting me too, little mother. I could give your child anything, health, power. A world that finally treats you kindly. All you have to do is say you accept." The baby shifted inside her, a sudden strong kick that stole her breath. It felt like a protest, or maybe an answer. Lena pressed her free hand to her belly, tears burning behind her closed eyes. "I don't want power," she said before she could stop herself. "I just want my child safe." The air went colder. Kai hissed under his breath. "Don't talk to it." But the hunter only sounded amused. "Then put your faith in a broken king. How many children has he failed already?" The words cracked something inside Kai that Lena could not see, but she felt the tremor in his grip. A tidal wave of old guilt rolled under his calm, so strong it almost made her stumble. He lifted their joined hands and brushed his thumb over her knuckles. The gesture was small but sure, an apology and a promise in one. "Lena, when I say now." She nodded even though his back was to her. "Okay." The hunter's voice slid closer, a breath away now. She could almost feel its cold hanging where its face should be. "You can't even fight me properly in here, Arian," it crooned. "Too many humans around, too many cameras. The old rules still bind you, don't they? No witnesses, no panic, no broken masquerade." "Someone has to care about the rules," Kai replied, "or the game ends." "It already ended," the hunter said. "You just haven't woken up to the ruins yet." Light flared behind Lena's eyes, soft and brief, like someone had snapped a match in the dark. She smelled something sharp and bitter, coffee, hot and burned. "Now," Kai whispered. She opened her eyes to a dim, coppery glow. Kai stood a few feet away, one hand outstretched, his palm bleeding light, not blood. He had knocked over the coffee pot. The dark liquid spread across the floor like a crude circle, reflecting the faint red glow from his ring. The hunter hovered just beyond the line of spilled coffee, a shape that refused to fully form. It was as if someone had tried to draw a person with smoke and then kept smudging the edges. Only the eyes were clear, 2 white coals burning in the dark, fixed on Kai. Lena shuffled sideways, heart pounding, eyes flicking between them. The storeroom door waited where he'd said, a narrow rectangle of darker dark. The hunter's gaze snapped to her, and the air between them tightened like a drawn bowstring. "Such a small thing," it murmured. "And yet that heart in you calls to half the night. You could have been a queen, instead you stock shelves." Anger flickered through her fear, surprising and hot. "There's nothing small about working," she shot back. "At least I earn what I have." The white coals narrowed. The temperature dropped another few degrees. Kai gave a soft, disbelieving huff. "You heard her," he said quietly. "She's not yours." He stepped forward, his boot landing right at the edge of the coffee circle. The red stone in his ring blazed brighter. The hunter recoiled, its smoky outline shuddering. "You bound yourself," it snarled. "You swore never to call the old light again. You gave up the throne." "I gave up the hunger," he corrected, "not the duty." With a sudden, sharp motion, he slammed his glowing palm to the floor. Light burst from the coffee, racing along the liquid in a rush of scarlet sparks. For a heartbeat, the entire store lit up in strange, flickering red, every shelf and sign and dust mote cut in stark relief. The hunter screamed, not loud, not human, but like wind forced through a broken flute. Its shape tore at the edges as the red light licked at it, drawing smoke away like strands of shadowed hair ripped from a braid. "Go," Kai shouted. Lena wrenched the storeroom door open and stumbled inside, flipping the deadbolt with shaking hands. She pressed her ear to the wood, breath coming fast. On the other side, the hunter's voice rose and fell in jagged tones, raw with fury. The air seemed to vibrate with it. Then abruptly another sound cut through. Kai's voice, not shouting now, but speaking in a language she didn't know. The words flowed low and steady, like water over stone, full of sorrow and steel. The hunter snarled something back. There was a thud, a crash of shattering glass, then a heavy silence that made her stomach twist. "Kai," she called softly, "Kai." No answer. She turned in the darkness, feeling along the wall until her fingers brushed a chain. She tugged it, and a single bare bulb clicked on overhead, painting the tiny room in yellow light. Boxes of snacks and cleaning supplies towered around her like crooked cardboard buildings. The air smelled of dust and citrus soap. Her knees went weak with reaction, and she sank onto an overturned crate, one hand braced on her belly. The baby kicked again, smaller this time, as if echoing her fear. "I know," she whispered. "I know, little one, I'm scared too." A soft knock sounded at the door. "Lena," it was Kai's voice, low and tired. "It's me, you can open it." Her hand froze on the bolt. A minute ago, she would have opened the door without thinking, but the shade had imitated her mother with terrifying accuracy. The hunter had twisted its voice into every shape her fear would believe. "Say something you couldn't possibly know," she said, forcing her tone to stay steady. "Something that thing out there wouldn't have pulled from my head." Silence fell on the other side of the door, broken only by the faint crackle of something electrical dying. When he spoke again, Kai's voice held a roughness she hadn't heard before. "When you laughed earlier," he said slowly, "about coffee cups and kings, you covered your mouth like you were afraid the sound took up too much space. People have probably told you to be quieter your whole life. I don't think you should listen to them." Her throat tightened. No customer, no friend, not even her ex had ever noticed that, let alone said it out loud. "Also," he added, a note of rueful humor slipping in, "you hide a bag of sour gummy worms behind the cleaning sprays on the second shelf, left side. I stepped on one." Relief rushed through her so fast it made her dizzy. She flipped the bolt and yanked the door open. Kai leaned against the frame, one hand pressed over his ribs. His jacket was torn, and there was a faint, unnatural bruise spreading along his jaw, a shadowy mark that seemed to shift when she blinked. His eyes, though, were clear and bright. "You're hurt," she said. "I'll heal," he replied. "Perks of the job." "Where is it?" His gaze flicked past her, scanning the storeroom automatically before coming back to rest on her face. "Gone, for now. I bound it to the pipes under the parking lot. It'll take them a while to dig it out." "Them," she echoed. "Hunters don't travel alone," he said. "And if one is awake," he trailed off, listening to something she couldn't hear. The muscles along his jaw tightened again. "Lena, this doesn't end at a gas station. That thing tasted your child's heartbeat. Others will come." Her legs felt suddenly too light, like they might drift out from under her. "What are you saying?" He straightened, ignoring the protest in his body, and held out a hand to her, the old ring catching the ugly yellow light and turning it almost beautiful. "I'm saying," he answered quietly, "that if you stay here, you and your baby will never be safe again. You have two choices. You can pretend tonight was a bad dream and wait for the next hunter. Or—" He swallowed, the word heavy, and for a moment she saw how much it cost him. "Or you can trust me. Come with me into a world I spent centuries trying to leave. Let me teach you how to protect what you love, even if it means walking into the heart of the darkness I once ruled." His eyes searched hers, not demanding, not ordering, just asking. Lena looked down at his outstretched hand, then at her own, rough from work, strong from lifting boxes and living through things that should have broken her. Outside, faint through the walls, sirens wailed in the distance, drawn by the brief power surge and shattered glass. Normal life rushing toward a place that was no longer normal at all. Her baby kicked, firm and insistent. She lifted her gaze to Kai, and wrapped her fingers around his, feeling his strange, steady warmth. "Okay," she whispered, "I'll go." His shoulders sagged with a mixture of relief and new fear. "Then we have to leave now before anyone else arrives, because the next people who show up here." He paused, listening again to the night beyond the walls. A slow, unfamiliar dread crept into his features, different from the fear of hunters. This was older, heavier. They might not be human either. And far beyond the highway, under a sky choked with city light, something ancient began to wake and turn its gaze toward a tiny gas station it had never noticed, until a forgotten king dared to choose a side again.